a warm welcome to each one of you. Very warm if you're located anywhere in the United States these days. It is quite warm here. Would love for you to introduce yourselves wherever you're coming in from. We are so glad to have you here. It is our joy to be able to provide this Pathway to Purpose webinar from FCCI. And as always, we're just so thankful for the opportunity for us to be able to come together and continue to work to build the kingdom of God, to advance His kingdom, especially through the marketplace. As business leaders and owners, we come together. I'm Ken Powell, a member of the leadership team here at FCCI. And just before we bring on today's guest, Cassie Laymon, I'll highlight a few engagement opportunities for you. First, if you please would, just make sure you introduce yourself in the chat there on LinkedIn or YouTube in those comments. We want to know who's here and have a chance for you to connect and continue in this kingdom collaboration as we work to fulfill God's calling through each of our organizations to be faithful in transforming the world through Christ. And as you connect with one another here today, we trust that God will open doors of opportunity for you to fulfill your purpose. Well, our weekly podcast continues to be a wonderful opportunity for you to engage with inspiring content that's been gathered through the years. We want to be a part of journeying with you as a Christian business leader and delivering this content. Some of the recent podcast episodes from Ann Byler to Liz Bohannon, and most recently this week from Francis Chan, just some incredible content that I know is going to be of value to you, help you grow in your spiritual walk, and be something that might be of use to those on your leadership team to share with them as well and allow them to continue to grow. Those podcast episodes drop every Monday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern Time. So jump on to your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube as well and just search for the FCCI Pathway to Purpose podcast, and you can find that there. Well, there's nothing quite like being together for the FCCI International Conference, and we are excited about the 4 days that we're going to have together in September with like-hearted Christian business leaders digging into outstanding conversations. We're going to be guided this way this year by thought leaders like Donald Miller, Jordan Rayner, Richard Blackaby, Crawford Loritz, and some others that we're really excited to announce very soon to you. And so we're going to be at the Everline Resort this year in Lake Tahoe, California. Can't wait to be together. Again, that's September 15 through 18. You can register at conference.fcci.org. And please do consider bringing your team. Of course, bring your spouse and enjoy that time together. Register just as soon as possible for some of our early registration discounts. And as you can imagine, with a conference like this, it does take sponsor involvement to pull this off. And we are thrilled that Beacon Wealth is one of our sponsors for this year's conference and will be with us in September, partnering with us to deliver an exceptional conference experience. And Cassie, as you come on here, I'm just so thankful to you, to your team, for your partnership, and for joining with us here for today's webinar. It's great to have you. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. We're looking forward to being there with you in September.
Well, as we get started here, Cassie, of course, I was thrilled to be able to read one of your books, I Found Jesus in the Stock Market. You've written a couple of books, correct?
Correct. Yes. There's one that came before that. That's The Retirement Game for Nurses. My background and my career started in healthcare. So
that's
that
great.
Was start of my business. Yeah.
Sure. Well, before you even started business, I was reading in your book and I was really struck. I happened to be on the golf team in high school. I wasn't very good, by the way, but I enjoyed being on the golf team. I was reading a portion early in that book. In the book, it says you were a high achiever. You're talking about the fact that, obviously you've had some struggles in life, as we all have, right? You've been through some low points, but you were kind of just setting the stage, talking about the fact that you were a high achiever. You were getting after it in high school, but you played on the men's golf team. And it just says that. There's just a statement, played on the men's golf team. And it just left me curious. Like, okay, what's that about?
Yes. Well, we did not have a women's golf team. So if I wanted to play competitive golf, I had to play on the men's team and play from the men's tees against the boys. Wow. So yeah, I did play for 4 years in high school. And of course, to go along with the achiever, I did have 4 varsity letters.
Nice. That's great. I love it. I love it. How much fun.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, I used to scrimmage with the women's basketball team, but that was for entirely different reasons. So, well, you also mentioned that you met your husband, Rick, And when you did that, he was really into this BRI thing, this biblically responsible investing, and you were a little bit arm's length at first. So share with us kind of how did that hit you, and what did you learn? What's been kind of that journey, that growth process with biblically responsible investing?
Yeah. So I grew up in the church. I was a good Presbyterian girl, so we were in church every week. My mom was very active in church. And then, like many kids, when I went to college, I kind of fell away from the church. So when I met my husband, and we met at a conference for financial advisors, I had really been away from the church for about 20 years. And he's talking about biblically responsible investing. And I said, I think you're just a little too churchy for me. But he would not be deterred, and he wanted me to know about this. And I kind of went on a journey to really learn about biblical investing. And it's really what brought me back to church. And so I started going to church and reading the Bible. And I will admit, in the beginning, it was from a place of skepticism. There's no way. And I hammered him with questions, and I interviewed lots of different people and read books, because I was going to show you that this really cannot work. And in the end, I was the one that was convinced. My heart was changed, and it really made me passionate about faith-based investing and the difference that I think we can make by investing our dollars this way.
It's fantastic. I love that. That story aligns with so many who have come at Scripture trying to say, no, there's no way. This is not going to work. There's no path forward here. I'm going to find the weak points, and then wow, God does what God does, and brings them to a place of faith. And I just love that. I appreciate you sharing that. Well, as we dig in here, of course, I'm going to turn things over to you right away. I want you to get into the specifics of the 401k plan, the faith-based investing, optimizing for tax savings, and helping employees save for the future, all those things, and just let you take it and run with it here, Cassie. So we're just so thankful that you're here and willing to share with us today and allow us to learn from what God has taught you through the years and what you've gained. So I will turn things over to you here, and let me pull up your presentation, and we'll be off and running.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about 401ks, and a question that often comes up from business owners, Christian business owners really, is can I do faith-based investing in my 401k? And so we'll talk about that a little bit today. And just so you know, I'm kind of trying to hit a sweet spot between owners who maybe don't have a 401k yet and are trying to decide if they want one, and things you should know if you already have a 401k. So I'm going to try to hit the sweet spot there. And of course, anytime you have a financial presentation, there are disclosures. This is for the attorneys saying basically past performance does not guarantee future results. Okay, so we talked a little bit about me and maybe growing up and how I got to faith-based investing. My husband not only convinced me about biblically responsible investing, but we got married. We merged our businesses together. We call it our marriage and acquisition. And so he is the CEO of Beacon Wealth Consultants, and I am the president. I'm a certified financial planner, a certified kingdom advisor, and also a certified plan fiduciary advisor. And what that really means is I love to help business owners decide, and develop their 401k plan and decide what are the attributes that they want in their plan. So I can give advice around those. And for today, we're going to talk about some of the benefits of having a 401k. What are the responsibilities of a business owner? We'll talk about plan design. We're going to talk a lot about investments and how do you add faith-based investing options into your plan, and also some things that you should expect in terms of service from your advisor and other providers. So some of the biggest concerns that I hear from business owners, these may sound familiar to you, is one, my plan is too complex or I don't understand the plan. You may have inherited this plan. You may have set it up at a time when the business was much smaller and now the business has grown. And there are oftentimes it's not your priority, right? So you don't even know all the details of the plan. That's pretty common. Maybe your plan fees are too high or you don't understand the fees. I often hear people say like, oh no, my advisor just does this for me. We don't pay any fees. And that's not true. And I will help you to understand the fees. I often hear some complaints about service. We never hear from our advisor. Or here is a big one. I can't contribute as much as I would like to, or I do contribute, and then at the end of the year when they run the plan testing, I always get a refund. So all of those problems can be solved, and we'll talk about some of those today. And then at the end, we'll talk about if you have individual questions about your plan, how we can have an individual conversation about that. So if you do not already have a 401k plan, what are some of the reasons you might consider it? First of all, it's a popular and desired benefit among employees. In terms of Christian business owners, this is probably the number one thing that I hear. They say, I don't care about me. I just want to make sure that my employees are well taken care of, and I want to attract good employees. Also helps you to attract and retain those employees. There are ways to reward employees for company success by using retirement plan dollars. And it allows you and your key players to maximize your own retirement savings. And there are also some really big tax savings. And if that is not on your radar in terms of why you are thinking about getting a 401k, we'll talk about that a little bit today, but that should certainly be very top of your list in terms of reasons that you're thinking about a 401k. Okay, just to give you a little bit of an introduction here, if you don't already know, there are typically 4 or 5 players in a 401k plan. First is the custodian. I just say those are the people that are holding your money. The TPA, third-party administrator, they are the ones that are creating your plan documents, amending the documents if you need to. They file your Form 5500. They do some plan testing. And then the record keeper are really the people that make sure the money gets where it needs to be. So when you upload the money from your payroll, the right person gets the right amount of money, it's invested in the right funds. And oftentimes, depending on who your provider is, like if you have an insurance provider, the same person might do all 3 of those. So you could have individual people, or it might all be packaged together. And then in addition to that, you usually have a financial advisor. They're the person that helped you set up the plan. And what you may or may not know or have is you may not know about a 338 fiduciary. And that's part of what we do at Beacon Wealth Consultants. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that because I think there's a lot of benefits to having that as one of the options in your plan to help you to manage it. So what is a fiduciary? Let's start off. You as a business owner are the fiduciary on the plan. So it is required that you manage the plan assets prudently, that you act with complete loyalty to the plan, avoid conflicts of interest, act solely in the best interest of plan participants. I think sometimes that's hard as the owner because that might be in conflict with your best interests. So this is why I'm saying it's good to delegate some of this sometimes so you can be, objective. And you assume personal responsibility and accountability for the actions and advice. So if a complaint comes in about the plan and you find yourself in an audit, you have to defend all of your choices. And, why is this fund in the plan? So, these are difficult things sometimes because you may not be digging into the individual funds in your plan. So if you don't manage it properly, the plan properly, there could be fines and penalties and personal financial liabilities. And this is the part where I say you could delegate some of this responsibility to a 338 investment advisor. So I'm going to explain to you what that is. So the 338 investment manager selects and monitors the investments, monitors the plan expenses, creates the investment policy statement, and does ongoing due diligence on the plan. So if you look at the next slide, this is just what we do at Beacon Wealth. And I'm not here to sell you anything today. I'm just going to tell you how we do it. And I'm happy to answer other questions about it. But you need to have an investment policy statement that says, this is how we are going to manage this plan. This is how we are going to select these funds. And this is the exact process we'll follow. And then at intervals throughout the year, you have to prove that that's what you did. So we do a due diligence kit twice a year where we say, these are the fund changes that we made. This is why we made them. And this is how we're following the plan. So for our plans that get regular audits, and those are companies that have over 100 participants, are going to have an audit every year. They just hand over their due diligence kit, and we really don't hear anything else from them, and it just explains everything. So it makes it really easy for the business owner to not even have to really talk about the fund part of the plan. I'm going to say one more thing about the 338. How do I know if I have one? Okay, so there's two pieces. There's a 321, which is probably your financial advisor, and the 338 investment manager. This is how you know if you have one or not. When there comes time to make a fund change, if you do not have a 338 advisor, the advisor will come to you and say, hey, we need to make a change on this fund. And you'll say, okay, what do you think? And they say, here are 5 choices. What do you want to do? And they say, what would you do? And then the advisor says, well, if it were me, I would pick this one. And so then it takes about 60 days to make that change. And even when you're doing that, though, and you have kind of a partner helping you, you are not delegating the responsibility to that person. It is still your responsibility. You are signing off on it. When you have a 338 advisor, they just take care of it. And they say, we need to make a fund change. This is why we made it. And we did it. And that doesn't mean that you're not involved and you don't know what changes are coming and happening, but you don't have to sign off on it. It's really kind of done for you. And so very few business owners have the time to be researching all the funds in their plan. And so that's why I really recommend it. It's just one less thing for you to have to worry about. Okay, let's talk about plan design. So plan design means we would just talk about all your goals and make this plan fit what you need it to fit. So this includes things like entry dates, vesting schedules. Something that a lot of people are interested now in is a Roth 401k, which is always an option for us to add in. And there are really so many choices, depending on how much you want to contribute. So, you may say, okay, yeah, I'm going to max out my 401k contribution for you, yourself. And then there's another layer we can put on that, which is safe harbor matching. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that, but you can get 3 or 4% extra on top of what you're contributing. And then you can say, well, I would even like to contribute more. So we can add profit sharing in, and I would like to contribute more. Based upon the setup of your business, we might be able to set up a cash balance plan for you. So as an individual, in some cases, you can defer up to $300,000 a year. And that is kind of mind-boggling for business owners. They don't even know that that was possible. And just depending on your goals and your profits at the end of the year, there are a lot of opportunities here for tax savings. One of the other things that is pretty new in setting up a plan design is auto enrollment. And so, typically if you've been in a 401k before, you come on board at the business and then you have to sign up to be in the 401k. And most people intend to do that and they never get around to it. And so by doing auto enrollment, everyone gets enrolled in the plan, usually at about 3%. And then if you don't want to be in it, it's completely fine. You just have to opt out. And by that one little change, it really helps your employees to meet their goals of saving, because most people really intend to do it, even though they don't get around to it. So, for example, one of the plans we worked with, that was about 40% plan participation. And then we added auto enrollment and it went to 80%. So it really, really helps people to make good choices. Auto escalation is usually tied to auto enrollment. So if you start at 3%, it's set up so that if you do nothing, it automatically increases by 1% a year until you get to 10%. And people get nervous about that. They say, oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen. I don't want my employees to worry that it's going to, escalate up like that. But they can always change it at any time. They can change how much they're contributing. They can opt out. They can change the amount. It is completely in their court. So there are a lot of different things we can do in plan design to make sure you are meeting your goals for the plan. Okay, so the big thing that I want to talk about today is about having faith-based investments in your plan. And again, I'm going to explain to you how we do it, and I can answer some other questions when we get to the end. So make sure as you're thinking of these questions, you're adding them into the chat. So the big question from Christian business owners always is, can I put faith-based investments in my plan? Because a lot of my employees maybe are not Christian, or they don't agree with my personally held beliefs. And the answer is yes, you can, but you can't only do that. You can't limit it to that. And so what you do is you really set up kind of a typical plan, and then you can add faith-based investing in. Okay, so this is how we do it. When you look at this list, most plans have in the red participant-directed options, which is a range of funds that the employees can create their own portfolios. Here's the challenge with that. Most people don't have the skill set to be a portfolio manager, or they get overwhelmed by it. They just don't know what to do with that. What should I be in? And they tend to just put a little bit in everything because they have a fear of missing out. And that doesn't always end up being the best solution for them. But that is usually in all plans. You have participant-directed options. You also have what's called a QDIA, and that's just a fancy term for target date funds. And that is if somebody enrolls and they don't opt into any of the funds, they don't choose, they get defaulted into the target date fund, which is a managed portfolio. They would pick, let's say they're going to retire in 2050. They pick the 2050 target date fund. And over time, as they get closer to 2050, it becomes more and more conservative. It's kind of a set it and forget it. But it really allows them to have a managed portfolio and not have to make the individual fund choices. So on top of that, we add in our LightPoint model portfolios. So this is 5 portfolios from a conservative to aggressive risk tolerance. And it is managed by our investment team according to our screening criteria. And so those are 5 extra choices that are in the plan. So I thought I would take a minute to tell you about our screening criteria, and so you can understand how we're managing those portfolios. So when I think about faith-based investing, I call it praying with our dollars. So we're saying, God, I'm going to give this money to this company, and I'm going to pray that they are going to do more of what they're already doing, and they're going to be successful, and the profits are going to grow, and then we're going to share in the profits together. So if you are investing in something that you really don't agree with, you are wanting it to grow and prosper. So an easy example that I use is about smoking, right? So over time, smoking we've really cracked down on underage smoking in America. So if you're the CEO of a tobacco company, how do you make money? You go to third world countries where it's not as regulated. You give out free cigarettes at concerts and sporting events to kids as young as 7 and 8 years old in the hopes that they will get addicted. And it's a very successful strategy, by the way. And so if you're investing in tobacco, the only way you can make more money is if we get more kids addicted to cigarettes. And that is true for a lot of the things that we do not invest in, right? So we are avoiding anything to do with abortion and the abortion industry and abortion philanthropy, which means contributions to Planned Parenthood. We are screening out companies that have to do with pornography and adult entertainment, the most aggressive advocates of anti-family lifestyles and causes. We look at human rights violations and all addictions, including alcohol, gambling, and tobacco. We just think, wow, I think there are probably some better ways for us to make money than by profiting from, the challenges of our, brothers and sisters who are addicted, for example. So those are the things that we're thinking about in negative screening. We also, though, and I think what's more exciting is we're looking at positive screening. So if you're eliminating those companies, let's look at companies who are doing wonderful things, that have great services and products. They have strong servant leaders. They live out the golden rule in business. They are also really strong in their governance and taking care of their communities. Now, these are not all Christian companies, but whether they are or not openly stated Christian companies, they follow these values. So I'm much more excited about investing in companies that are, reversing the progression of muscular dystrophy, curing cancer, making driverless cars safer, really things that help people to grow and flourish, clean water technology. These are examples of things that we are investing in and that we get really excited about investing in because, I don't know, it just makes investing so much more, interesting to know that you're making a positive impact. So those are the screens that we apply to the LightPoint portfolios. So again, this is just a little summary of the 3 parts of how we do the plan. So in the plan are the 5 fully asset allocated models. It looks like a fund. You just choose one. It makes it very easy for employees. But I want to take a moment because one of the things that often comes up, people say like, well, I just am going to add a couple of faith-based funds into the plan and then that will take care of it. So when we go to the fiduciary responsibility that we talked about, the thing about faith-based funds is sometimes they are more expensive if you don't have the right share class, and the performance changes over time just like any other funds. So if your employees put all of their money in the faith-based individual couple funds that you put in the plan, it might not be, a well-balanced strategy for them, and they don't know all the details about what I should and should not be investing in. So in the LightPoint portfolios, and now let me just say they are not all faith-based funds, but they are all funds that pass our screening. And so we are looking at those on a regular basis to see if anything's changed. We have a whole team of people that do research on the funds, and we're up to date on that at all times. And if a fund is not performing well, we will replace it with another fund. And I think that piece of it is important to not just say, oh, I'll just, dump a couple faith-based funds in here, because it's not really the best thing for your employees because they don't know how to analyze those funds and how to make them fit into their own portfolio. That's just a recommendation that I have. Okay. So in addition to those model portfolios, then we also have the participant directed options. And so we typically have a fund in each of these categories. They are often passive index funds. And these are the things that we're thinking about when we're doing your whole investment lineup. You need to have active funds and passive funds. You need to have portfolios. You need to have options for people who want to do it themselves. You need to have screened and unscreened. A big request that I get from Christian business owners is, I only want to do faith-based investing. I don't want anything else. And I always just say, I am here to keep you out of jail. And we just have to follow the letter of the law on what the Department of Labor is looking for and make sure we're meeting all of those criteria in addition to adding in our faith-based portfolios. And then finally, all plans should have a QDIA or target date fund, a lineup. There's usually, 10 or more funds that hit all the different, 2025, 2030, 2035, just to make sure for all employees, depending on their age, that meet their criteria. Okay, so that is how we approach it. And if you have questions about what you're doing, we're going to talk about that later if you need some help looking at that. Okay. Something else you should be looking at is you should have great advisor service. So as an owner, you should be having meetings, regular meetings with an advisor to talk about the health of the plan, what you're seeing at the company, things that people are requesting. And then the advisor can share their thoughts about, any changes that need to be made. They should be helping you with new employee enrollment throughout the year, unless you have someone on your team who you want to do it, and that's okay too. It can be very flexible. They should be helping with encouraging participants to get into the plan. So, financial wellness is a hot topic now, and you want your employees to feel like they're doing everything they can do to be in a good place when they retire. Provide ongoing employee education and meet with employees one-on-one as needed. I think probably gone are the days that someone is on site on a 3 or 4 times a year to meet with employees, unless you have a local advisor, and that's great. But oftentimes it's more like once or twice a year, and then just being available virtually to meet with employees whenever they need it. And so that's how we've handled working with a lot of our employee participants. And we're just available to answer their questions anytime. You don't have to wait until we're on site to meet. Okay, so here, just as a business owner and a plan sponsor, these are just some things that I think you should be paying attention to in terms of what is a really healthy plan. So you want an experienced and available TPA record keeper. I hear so many complaints about, I send emails and emails and I never get any response. So we use one TPA and record keeper. I'll just tell you, their name is Epic, EPIC. And that was one of the really important things to me, is that we had a very responsive person in that role. And so that's been a great relationship for us. Outsourced fiduciary liability. If you do not think that you're going to be evaluating all of these funds on a regular basis yourself, you want to outsource that. You want to have flexible plan design. You can make changes whenever the time comes. A robust lineup of investment choices. High level of advisor service, like I went over in the last slide, and also easy to use tools like a website and an app for your employees. There's no reason in this day and age that you just do not have easy and user-friendly tools for your employees. Okay, so we're going to answer your questions in a minute, but one of the things that we do at Beacon is a plan analysis. So we may have talked about some things today that you're like, I don't even know what we have, or I don't know what that costs. And so we often just do a free analysis to let you know the health of your plan. We look at your investment lineup, we assess your fiduciary risk, and we have some scores that we assign to that. We do screening reports of your funds and a full fee analysis. And, at the end of the day, we'll just tell you where you stand on that. So there have been plenty of people that we have done one of these analysis, and I say, I think you're in really good shape, or here are some suggestions for a change. This is not a hard sell. This is just to provide you with information so that you can make some good decisions about your plan going forward, and to learn about if there's any risks that you should be aware of. So there are a few things we need for a plan analysis. These are on the slide, but also I gave a list to Ken, so he will email this out to you after our talk today about some of the documents that we need. If you are more than a small business, you may not know where these documents live. It might be with your CFO or your head of HR. And so I usually just talk to them and say, this is what we need, and they help us to find it if it's not at the ready for you, some of the documents that we need to do the analysis. Okay, for next steps, if you want us to take a look at your plan, you can email me at Cassandra@beaconwealth.com. I believe that Ken also has a link that he's going to send out if you want to schedule some time on my calendar. And yeah, I think we're probably ready for questions.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks for walking through that. I know there's just so much in there that, as someone like myself who's never actually launched into a 401k plan from that side of the desk, really, really valuable. So let me ask the question then. Mm-hmm. How do I know if I'm a business owner and, let's say, entrepreneur, I've launched this business, I've moved forward, what is the point at which I really need to start a 401k plan? How do I know when's the right time?
Yeah, there's two things that I think really come up that make people start thinking about this. One is that you're trying to hire people and they're saying, oh, you don't have a 401k plan? Or your employees are coming to you and saying, hey, when are we going to do a 401k plan? So that is a time when you're, thinking about the growth of your business and attracting great talent. So that is one time. And then the other thing is really about, you're ending the year with a lot of profit and you're paying taxes on it. And I think it's a real opportunity for you as an employer, but as an individual to get some good tax savings. Some other things though, one other thing I would think about is, what are you as an individual wanting to contribute to the plan, right? So if someone says to me, I just really want to do this for my employees, I'm not really worried about me, I'm just going to put in $5,000 a year. You could start an IRA. for $5,000 a year and not have all the complexity
All
that goes
that.
along with this, right? There are SEPs, there's simples, there are many other things that we didn't talk about today. But if you are not wanting to fully contribute, I would probably say it is not the right time. But when you're ready because of a tax situation to really start socking away some money, that's another time to think about starting a 401k.
So, as you mentioned, the tax credits, give us a little bit more of that. What are those tax credits? Dig into that a little bit for me. What else?
Yeah.
What can I expect there? What are those opportunities?
Yeah, so there are really some great tax credits now for starting a 401k.
Hmm.
And we wrote a whole article about this. And so, Ken, I think you're going to send that out to
Yes.
folks. And this gives a real breakdown of, if you're a very small business, like 0 to 50 employees,
Hmm.
50 to 100 employees. But I thought just to make it easy, I would give you, let's give an example of what this might look like. So let's say you have 20 employees and you're the owner. The owner makes $150,000 a year, and each of the employees makes $50,000. I just wanted to try to pick some easy round numbers. So for your startup costs, and this is for the first 3 years, you can get $250 per person that makes under $100,000. So in this example, $4,750 credit for the first 3 years. And then if you add auto enrollment, that's $500 a year for the first 3 years. And then for the matching, it's up to $1,000 for each employee making under $100,000. And that's phased out over 5 years. For the first 2 years, it's 100% of that. And then it goes down to 75%, 50%, 25%.
Gotcha. Okay.
A lot of moving pieces. So that might sound a little confusing, but if you look at the article and say, okay, I have 75 employees and this is what their salaries are, you can kind of calculate out. There's some really great benefits to this. And you don't need to be an expert in it. You can take this article and go to your CPA and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What does this mean for me? And let your CPA figure it out.
That's great. So, had a couple questions come in. Let me just pop over here and let's see here. Ed, 48. Which one record keeper do you use? I think you'd mentioned, but
Yep, Epic. Yep, EPIC. We use Epic for both our TPA and record keeper. So we at
wonderful.
Beacon Wealth, we don't do that part. We are the investment manager, and we can be an advisor. Or if you have an advisor that you love and you say, I just want to keep my advisor, we work with other advisors too. We don't have to be the advisor.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, and while we're here, I'll just mention and greetings to some of these other folks that have joined us here today. But great to have you, Bernie. Bernie's in here from Paris, so Paris, France.
Nice.
Great to have you here, Bernie. And the Gospel Seed Foundation out of Kentucky. Great to have you here. Elaine Wells. Oh, that's J.E. Hi, J.E. Great to have you here. He's out of Las Cruces, New Mexico. J.E.'s a great friend of FCCI. So great to have you here. Matt joins. He's out of Alpharetta, Georgia. And Matt's a great guy. Love the family there in Alpharetta that are so close to FCCI. Great to have you here, Matt. Austin Crocos, if I said that correctly, out of Durango. Great to have you here, Austin. And so thanks, Claudia from Virginia. Great to have you here as well. And Cam Smith out of State College. Hey, Cam. Good to have you here with us as well. So another question for you as we're wrapping things up here, Cassie. Just, as we look at these plans, what are some areas where business owners have challenges? What are those barriers to entry? What are some of the sticking points when we're really trying to get this plan off the ground? What about that? How about challenge points?
Well, I think it's so interesting in working with entrepreneurs, right? We're big idea people. So often by the time that a business owner gets to me, they had this big idea and I'm going to tell you how it's going to work. And they say, okay, I'm going to put this much in myself, and then my employees can put in this much. And I have to slow them down a little bit and say, actually, that's not up to you. There's rules about this. And so it's getting a little too far down the line in your own ideas of what you want it to look like and not necessarily knowing all the rules that go along with that. So as soon as you start thinking about it, I would just, reach out to me or someone else that, you're working with on your 401k and talk about, what really is the flexibility here, because there are some hard and fast rules that you need to follow. The other thing is if you decide you are not going to match, right? So sometimes people are like, I just want to get this started. I'm not going to contribute. I'm not going to match. I just want something so my employees can put money in. Usually that does not work. And if you're not excited about it, enthusiastic, it's really about any plan that we put in, right, in our work. If you as the owner are not enthusiastic about it, most employees won't do it either. And then, there's a lot of fees and setup that go along with a 401k. And you just want to be a good steward, right? You want to make sure that if people are not going to participate in it, it's not a good plan. So you need to be a participant and you need to be an evangelist for the 401k plan. So that's another thing. Also, sometimes business owners fancy themselves portfolio managers. They want
Sure.
to put their own funds, right? They're like, I love this fund and I want to be in this fund. And really, it's all about balance when we look at the entire investment lineup. And oftentimes, by adding these other funds in, they're just like kind of your pet favorites, it really throws off the balance of the whole plan. So I said before, oftentimes participants, right, if there's 10 funds in the plan, they will put 10% in everything because they don't want to miss out. And so if you keep adding in all these large cap funds, let's say, and people do that, it ends up they are way too aggressive. And it's not good for them in terms of the way that they're investing. So you kind of have to just say, this is not the thing I'm going to spend the most time on. I'm going to trust the investment lineup, and we're going to really look at what's best for all the employees. I always like to say your 401k you want it to be kind of vanilla, right? The owners want a lot of jazz, and employees get in trouble if you're starting to add in things like, gold and Bitcoin. And, you got to really be careful what you're putting in there for everyone. And if you want to do a lot of, exciting investing, you should do that somewhere outside of your 401k.
Yeah, that's great. I can only imagine that that's true. I mean, as you were talking about maintaining the balance, because sometimes we get into these ideas, biblically responsible investing, and we go off the deep end, right? We go to the extremes, right? And so I think there's just so much there with having that wisdom to come in and have the counsel that you provide, and others like you, but to have that counsel to say, okay, let's make sure we are staying balanced, that there is health here in how we're approaching that investing model. And I loved what you said about the fact that, we need to invest in these companies that are doing the right things for the right reasons. We're going through that screening process. We're screening out the negative, but it doesn't mean that necessarily we could define them as a Christian business. And to maintain that balance as well in that investment plan is just really critical, because I could see where people would get maybe way out of balance there.
Yeah. I mean, we get enthusiastic about it because who's not? It sounds great. And I like to say we're looking at the intersection of, what is the most conservative screening we can do and still be good fiduciaries, looking at fees and performance. We try to really find the best intersection of those two, the best balance.
Well, you mentioned even in the book that some of the screening tools, Evaluator, maybe some others. Can you speak to those a little bit? Just if someone was saying, hey, I'd like to dig in a little bit. I want to maintain some balance and I want to be wise, but what are some of those tools, those resources?
Yeah, so Evaluator is one that is provided by Timothy Plan. Inspire also has one. And oftentimes they're not really available to individuals, but your advisor might have access to them. We do have a spot on our website if you want to submit funds or even stock tickers. Of course, that doesn't have anything to do with your 401k plan. You're not having individual stocks typically in your 401k plan. But if you send us a list of funds, we can send you a screening report, and you can see what this looks like. What are the top holdings in this fund and what are they involved in? We also use some other tools, Sustainalytics, which is not a faith-based tool. We use one called Biblically Responsible Investing Institute. So, this is the other thing. This is going to be our theme today, Ken. What's the balance, right? Almost every tool is created by a fund company. So they all screen a little bit differently because their own funds are going to screen perfectly, right? So they all just have it, and this is not a, an accusation of anything.
Sure,
It's just that
sure.
they have
Yeah.
different criteria. So we try to go to several
Mhm.
sources and say, what does it say at each of these different screening providers? And then we have a bigger conversation. There are 6 of us on the investment committee, and we
Mhm.
talk about, what's the intent here? What's really happening? What do they say they are doing? Are they really doing it? And we call that our discernment approach.
I
And
love
we
it.
just
Yeah.
try to have wise conversations with multiple people to make the best choices that we can for
Mm.
what we're investing in.
That's great. Another question that's come in here, as far as the responsibility of the employer to make employees aware of participation, what's the level of responsibility to encourage involvement in the 401k? What's the balance there?
Yeah, so there is, typically a big enrollment. I always like to have a party, right? Like, let's have a party, and everybody comes, and it's a big enrollment, and you educate everybody
Mhm.
about it, and then also as people are coming into the plan. But hopefully, your advisor is engaging with employees to touch base, and
Mhm.
this is one of the things you talk about in one of your meetings that you have, right? Like, oh, here are all the people who are not enrolled. And as an advisor, we would say, oh, you want us to get in touch with them and see if we can encourage them. We're doing ongoing education, but then there's also some ongoing announcements that you do throughout the
Mm.
year, like if
Sure.
you fund changes, things that go out at the end of the year, participant notices. That's what I was looking for. There
Mm.
are participant notices that happen throughout the year, and as the employer, you're responsible to that. So I think from time to time, you mention it, you encourage it. I always usually try to give an example of if you do participate in this plan versus if you don't participate in this plan, and what that means for you 35 years from now. So it's a big difference.
Sure is. Absolutely. Well, Cassie, thank you so much. This has been very informative, very helpful, and I'm sure we'll continue to garner lots of great input and insight from you, from your organization in the days ahead. And I'm super excited about our partnership in the conference. Thank you for that, and the ability to serve our membership in that way with these tools, with these resources. So, thank you for taking the time today for being a part of
Well, thank
this.
you for having me. And I look forward to seeing everyone in person in September. And if you have questions before then, please don't hesitate to reach out. I just love to talk about this stuff. I know it's a little nerdy, but it's my favorite topic. So
Somebody's got to love it, and I'm glad you do.
that's
It's
right.
so good. Well, thank you. Well, as we sign off here, folks, today, I wanted to just make you aware of what's coming up in August for our webinar as well, with our thanks to Cassie and her team for the great webinar today and informative webinar that we've just enjoyed. But again, August 20th, Tuesday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, with Greg Gilbert of Blue Trust. He's one of the managing directors, senior partner there with Blue Trust, and talking about family money, continuing kind of in this line, this conversation, but keys to your family finances as a business owner. How do I make sure I am planning well, preparing well for my family? And what goes into that process, and dig into some of those fundamentals, some tools, resources that are available. And so I know you're going to enjoy that as well. So we'll look forward to being together again for our August webinar on the 20th. The registration email will be coming out in just a few moments. As Cassie mentioned, there are going to be some resources, tools that will be available to you there from Beacon Wealth. So make sure you take advantage of those and dig into what they have made available. So we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much for joining us today for our Pathway to Purpose webinar.